should have known something was wrong the day Bruno stopped eating from David's hand. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 6 years, I've worked as a veterinary technician at a small animal clinic just outside Portland. I live alone in a rental house with a fenced backyard, the kind of place that's perfect for a dog but feels too quiet for just one person. Bruno came into my life on a February morning, when I least expected it. A police officer brought him in. German Shepherd mix, maybe 5 years old, found wandering near the interstate. No collar, no chip, no one looking for him. The officer said he'd been circling the same spot for hours, like he was waiting for someone who never came. When I walked into the exam room, Bruno was sitting perfectly still in the corner. Not cowering, not aggressive, just watching. His eyes were amber-colored, sharp and focused, tracking every movement I made. I knelt down slowly, spoke soft. He tilted his head, studying me. Then he walked over and sat directly in front of me, maintaining eye contact for what felt like a full minute. It wasn't submission. It was assessment. He chose me that day. I'm certain of it. The shelter couldn't take him. They were over capacity. I told myself I'd foster him for a week, maybe 2, find him a good home. But that first night, when I woke up at 2 in the morning from a nightmare about my ex-husband, Bruno was sitting beside my bed. Not on it, just there. Present. I reached out my hand. He pressed his head against it. He stayed. Bruno learned everything fast. Too fast for a dog who'd supposedly been astray. Within 3 days, he knew where I kept his food, what time I left for work, which door I used. He'd position himself by the front window every morning at 7:45, watching for my car to pull out of the driveway. But it was the small things that made me fall in love with him. The way he'd bring me his leash at exactly 6:30 every evening, our walking time. How he'd rest his chin on my knee when I was stressed, not asking for anything, just being there. The soft sound he'd make, not quite a whine, when I'd come home after a long shift. He didn't play fetch, didn't chase squirrels, didn't act like any dog I'd ever known. He watched, he remembered, he understood. My best friend Rachel said I was projecting, that I was lonely after the divorce and seeing things in Bruno that weren't there. But she didn't see what I saw. She didn't notice how Bruno would position himself between me and strangers on our walks, how he'd watch people's hands, not their faces, how he'd memorize routes, remember cars, track patterns. This dog had been trained by someone who knew what they were doing. 3 months after I adopted Bruno, I met David. It was a Saturday afternoon at the farmer's market downtown. I was buying vegetables, Bruno sitting patiently beside me, when this man stopped and asked if he could pet him. David Chen, 35, worked in corporate finance, had one of those smiles that made you feel like you were the only person in the world. Tall, well-dressed, confident. He knelt down and offered his hand to Bruno, palm up, the right way. Bruno sniffed it, accepted a brief pat on the head, sat back down. Beautiful dog, David said. German Shepherd. Mix, I told him. Rescue. We talked for 20 minutes. He asked about my work, told me about his job, made me laugh twice. When he asked for my number, I surprised myself by giving it to him. Bruno was quiet on the walk home, quieter than usual. The first date was coffee on a Wednesday afternoon. David showed up early, bought my drink before I arrived, asked thoughtful questions. He talked about his family, his work, his apartment downtown. Everything felt easy, natural. When he walked me to my car, he didn't try to kiss me, just smiled and said he'd like to see me again. I said yes. Bruno was sitting in his usual spot by the front window when I got home. He watched me come up the walkway, didn't move when I opened the door, just watched. I met someone, I told him, scratching behind his ears. Nice guy, you'll like him. Bruno turned his head away. The second date was dinner at an Italian place on the east side. David picked me up, opened doors, made conversation with the waiter. He asked about Bruno, about how I'd found him, what his personality was like. He's protective, I said. Smart. Sometimes I think he understands more than I give him credit for. David laughed. Dogs are great. I grew up with them, had a golden retriever named Buddy. Best friend I ever had. Something in his voice when he said that. Something I didn't catch then. After 6 weeks, David asked if he could meet Bruno properly. Come over for dinner, spend time at my place. I'd been putting it off without really knowing why, but 6 weeks felt like enough time, felt safe. I made chicken pasta, set the table. Bruno watched from his spot near the fireplace, ears forward, completely still. When David arrived, he brought flowers, expensive ones. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek, then immediately walked over to Bruno. Hey there, big guy, he said, extending his hand. Bruno didn't move, didn't sniff, just stared. David laughed it off. Guess he needs time to warm up. During dinner, Bruno stayed in the living room, positioned where he could see both of us. He didn't beg for food, didn't approach, just observed. David told a story about a business deal he'd closed, another about his college roommate. He poured wine, complimented the food, reached across the table to touch my hand. Everything was perfect. But when I got up to clear the plates, I caught Bruno's reflection in the kitchen window. He was standing now, rigid, eyes locked on David. Your dog doesn't like me, David said from the dining room. He was smiling, but his tone had changed. Flatter. He's just protective, I called back. He'll warm up. David stayed until 11. We watched a movie on the couch. He kept his arm around me, casual and comfortable. Bruno remained across the room, unmoving. When David left, he kissed me at the door. Longer this time, meaningful. Next time, he said, maybe Bruno and I can go for a walk together, bond a little. I agreed. It made sense. But when I closed the door and turned around, Bruno was standing right behind me, closer than he'd ever been when I had company over. I knelt down. What is it? He licked my hand once, then walked to the front window and sat down, staring at the street where David's car had just disappeared. Over the next 2 months, David became part of my routine. Dinner twice a week, movies, long conversations on the phone. He was attentive, considerate, interested in my life. He remembered small details, brought me coffee when I mentioned being tired, sent flowers to my work. My coworkers said I was glowing. Rachel said it was about time I moved on from my ex. But Bruno never warmed up to him. Every time David came over, Bruno would retreat to the far side of the room. He'd watch, silent and still, amber eyes tracking every movement. When David tried to pet him, Bruno would tolerate it for exactly 3 seconds, then move away. I don't get it, David said one evening. We were sitting on the couch, his arm around me. I love dogs, dogs love me. What's his problem? He's just particular, I said. He'll come around. But I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. There were small things I started noticing. The way David's voice would change when he talked to Bruno, still friendly, but with an edge underneath. How he'd make comments about Bruno being stubborn, difficult, poorly trained, always laughing after like it was a joke. You should be firmer with him, David said once. Dogs need structure, authority. I didn't like how that sounded, but I didn't say anything. In month 4, David suggested moving in together. We were having dinner at his apartment downtown. Modern, expensive, barely lived in. He'd cooked steak, opened a bottle of wine that cost more than my weekly groceries. I know it's fast, he said, reaching across the table. But I'm 35, I know what I want, and I want this. My heart was pounding, part excitement, part something else. I'd need to bring Bruno, I said. Of course. His smile was perfect. We'll find a place with a yard, something good for both of you. That night, driving home, I felt like I was floating. This was it, the fresh start I'd been hopping for after my divorce. But when I walked through the door, Bruno was standing in the middle of the living room. Not by the window, not in his usual spot. In the center of the room, facing the door. He stared at me, not at my face, at my hand. I looked down. I was holding the folder David had given me. Rental listings he'd printed out, places he thought we should look at. Bruno's ears went back, just slightly. It's good news, I told him. We're going to have a real yard, more space. He turned and walked to the far corner of the room, lay down with his back to me. The next morning, I noticed something strange. I was getting ready for work, packing my lunch, when I realized Bruno hadn't eaten his breakfast. The bowl was full, untouched. He always ate first thing in the morning, always. I knelt beside him. You okay, buddy? He looked at me, then at the folder on the counter, then back at me. You're being dramatic, I said, scratching his head. Change is scary, I get it, but David's good. This is good for us. Bruno stood up and walked to the back door, stared at it. I let him out into the yard. He went to the far corner and sat down, facing away from the house. He stayed there for 2 hours. That weekend, David came over to discuss the apartment search. He brought lunch, spread the rental listings across my coffee table, pointed out neighborhoods and commute times and square footage. Bruno was in the backyard. He'd been spending more time out there lately. This one's perfect, David said, tapping a listing. 2-bedroom, big yard, allows dogs, and it's close to my office. It's expensive, I said, looking at the rent. We'll split it, and besides, I'm due for a promotion soon. Money won't be an issue. He pulled me close, kissed my forehead. This is our future, Sarah. I can feel it. I wanted to feel it too. I wanted this to be right. But through the window, I could see Bruno sitting in the yard, staring at the house, at us. Later that evening, after David left, I went outside to bring Bruno in for dinner. He was sitting in the same spot, hadn't moved in hours. Come on, I said, inside. He didn't move. I walked over, knelt beside him. Talk to me, what's wrong? He turned his head and looked at me, really looked at me. Then he stood up, walked past me, and went straight to the back door. But he didn't go inside. He sat down next to it, waiting. When I opened the door, he walked in, went directly to my bedroom, and lay down under the bed. He'd never done that before. In a year and a half, Bruno had never hidden from me. I found him there an hour later. He wouldn't come out, wouldn't eat, just lay there in the dark, eyes open, watching the doorway. Okay, I said softly. I hear you, I don't understand, but I hear you. I called Rachel that night, told her everything. Maybe Bruno's picking up on your stress, she said. Dogs are empathetic. If you're anxious about moving in with David, Bruno's going to sense that. But I'm not anxious, I said. I'm excited. Are you? I didn't answer. Sarah, Rachel continued, I know you want this to work. You deserve to be happy. But you can't ignore what your gut is telling you, or what Bruno is telling you. He's a dog, I said. He doesn't understand relationships. Maybe not, but he understands people. After we hung up, I sat on the floor next to my bed. Bruno was still underneath, eyes reflecting the dim light from the hallway. If you know something I don't, I whispered, I wish you could tell me. He crawled forward, just enough to rest his head on my leg. We stayed like that until I fell asleep on the floor. The next week, David invited me to a work event. Cocktail party at a hotel downtown, networking thing, boring but important. He wanted me to meet his colleagues, his boss. Show me off, he said. I wore a black dress, did my makeup carefully. David picked me up at 7, told me I looked beautiful, held my hand in the car. The party was exactly what I expected. Expensive venue, open bar, people in suits making small talk. David introduced me to everyone, put his hand on my lower back, called me his girlfriend with obvious pride. I should have felt good, should have felt wanted. But something felt off, wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it until later, when I went to the bathroom. I was washing my hands when I heard David's voice from the hallway outside. He was talking to someone, laughing. Yeah, she's great, he was saying. Little boring but stable, and she's got her own place. Plus she works with animals, so she's nurturing. Exactly what I need right now. Exactly what I need right now. Not want, need. I stood there, water still running, staring at my reflection. The woman he was talking to said something I couldn't hear. David laughed again. The dog's a pain in the ass, but I can deal with it. Once we're living together, I'll train it properly, or we'll find somewhere that doesn't allow pets. Either way. My hands were shaking. I dried them slowly, reapplied my lipstick, walked back out to the party. David saw me, smiled, waved me over. I walked toward him, smiled back. "Having fun?" he asked, slipping his arm around my waist. "Yeah," I said. "Great party." I didn't confront him that night. Didn't say a word in the car ride home. Just listened to him talk about his boss, his colleagues, his potential promotion. When he kissed me goodnight at my door, I kissed him back. "I'll call you tomorrow," he said. "We need to make a decision on that apartment soon." I nodded, watched him walk to his car, watched him drive away. Then I went inside. Bruno was sitting by the door. He'd been waiting. I sat down on the floor in front of him. He moved closer, rested his head on my shoulder. "You knew," I whispered. "You knew the whole time." He made that soft sound, not quite a whine. I cried into his fur for 20 minutes. The next day, I told David I needed time, that moving in together felt rushed, that I wanted to slow down. His reaction told me everything I needed to know. "Are you serious?" he said. We were on the phone. His voice had changed completely. Colder. "Sarah, we've been together for 5 months. I've been patient. I've been understanding. What more do you want?" "I just need time to think." "Time to think, right." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "This is about that dog, isn't it?" "What?" "Bruno. You've let that animal control your entire life. You can't make a single decision without considering what the dog wants. It's pathetic." I felt something break inside my chest. "Don't talk about him like that." "He's a dog, Sarah, an animal. He doesn't get a vote in our relationship." "This conversation is over." "Fine, call me when you grow up." He hung up. I stood there holding my phone, shaking. Bruno was sitting beside me, leaning against my leg. I didn't hear from David for 3 days. Then he showed up at my door on Thursday evening, flowers in hand, apology on his lips. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was out of line. I let my frustration get the better of me. You're right, we should take our time." I didn't invite him in. "David, I think we need to talk." "I know, and I want to, but not like this. Let me take you to dinner tomorrow, somewhere nice. Let me show you I mean it." Bruno was standing behind me. I could feel him there. "I don't think that's a good idea." David's smile faded. "Sarah, come on. Don't throw this away over one argument." "It's not about the argument." "Then what is it about?" I looked at him, really looked at him, saw the mask starting to crack. "I heard what you said at the party. About me being exactly what you need right now. About getting rid of Bruno." His expression went completely blank. Then he laughed. "You're upset about that? Sarah, I was drunk, making jokes with a coworker. It didn't mean anything." "It meant everything." His jaw tightened. "So that's it. You're ending this because you overheard a private conversation." "I'm ending this because I finally understand what I'm looking at." He stared at me for a long moment. The mask fell away completely. What was underneath was cold, calculating. "You're making a mistake," he said quietly. "You're not going to find better than me. You're 32, divorced, working a dead-end job. I was your best shot." Bruno growled, low and quiet. David's eyes flickered to him. Something passed across his face, something dark. "Keep your dog under control," he said. "I think you should leave." He stood there for another few seconds. Then he dropped the flowers on my doorstep, crushed them under his shoe as he walked away. I watched him drive off, closed the door, locked it. Bruno was still standing beside me, tense and alert. "Thank you," I whispered to him, "for trying to tell me." He licked my hand. That should have been the end of it. A bad relationship dodged, a lesson learned. But David didn't let it end. The calls started 2 days later. He'd ring once, hang up. Text, "We need to talk," and nothing else. Show up at the coffee shop near my work, always at a distance, always watching. I blocked his number. He got a new one. I stopped going to my usual places. Changed my routine. Started parking in different spots. Bruno became hypervigilant. He'd check every window before settling down, pace the house at night, refuse to go in the backyard unless I was with him. I know, I told him one evening. We were sitting in the dark living room, both of us too anxious to sleep. I know you're scared. I'm scared too. 3 weeks after the breakup, I came home from work to find my back gate open. I know I'd closed it that morning. I always checked, always. Bruno was in the yard, sitting by the back door, soaking wet. It had been raining all day. My heart stopped. How long have you been out here? He just stared at me. I checked the gate. The latch was broken, not old and worn, broken recently. I called the police. They sent an officer who looked at the gate, took some notes, told me to install a camera. Probably just vandals, he said, or kids. But I knew better, and so did Bruno. That night I ordered security cameras, 2 for the front, 2 for the back, motion activated, night vision, the works. Bruno slept at the foot of my bed, didn't move all night. The cameras arrived 3 days later. I installed them myself, synced them to my phone, checked them obsessively. Nothing happened for a week. Then on a Tuesday night, my phone buzzed at 2:15 in the morning. Motion detected. Front yard. I opened the app with shaking hands. The camera showed my driveway. Empty, just shadows from the streetlight. I watched for 5 minutes. Nothing moved. Then I checked the timestamp on the notification. The motion had been detected at 2:13. It was now 2:17. Someone had been there, and they were gone. I went to the living room. Bruno was already at the front window, staring out, every muscle in his body tight. Did you see something? His ears were flat against his head. I pulled up the recording, watched it frame by frame. There, at 2:13 and 22 seconds, a figure, just at the edge of the camera's range, standing on the sidewalk, facing my house. Too dark to make out features, but the height was right, the build was right. I took screenshots, called the police again, same officer as before. Ma'am, that could be anyone, a neighbor, someone walking their dog. Without a clear image, there's nothing we can do. He's stalking me. Has he threatened you directly? No, but... Has he attempted to contact you after you asked him to stop? He calls from different numbers. I can't prove it's him. The officer sighed. Look, I understand you're scared, but legally we need evidence of a clear threat. Install more cameras. Document everything. If he makes direct contact or explicit threats, call us immediately. He left. Bruno was still at the window. I knelt beside him. We're okay, we're safe. He didn't look at me, just kept watching. The next 3 weeks were a nightmare. My phone would buzz at random times. Motion detected. But when I checked, nothing was there, just shadows, just wind, just my imagination. Except it wasn't my imagination. I could feel it. Someone was watching, testing my security, learning my patterns. Bruno felt it too. He stopped eating regularly, stopped sleeping through the night, would stand at windows for hours watching. I started sleeping with a baseball bat next to my bed, started jumping at every sound, started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. Rachel suggested a restraining order, but I didn't have enough evidence, just screenshots of a figure on a sidewalk, just broken gate latches, just a feeling. My boss noticed I was distracted at work, asked if everything was okay at home. I lied, said I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was unraveling. And then it stopped. No more motion alerts, no more phone calls, no more sightings. 1 week, then 2, then 3. I started to relax, started to breathe again, started to think maybe David had moved on, found someone new, let it go. Bruno didn't relax. He kept watching, kept waiting. It's over, I told him one evening. We were sitting on the couch, first time in weeks I'd felt almost normal. He's gone. Bruno looked at me, those amber eyes, that knowing stare. He didn't believe it, and somewhere deep down, neither did I. But I wanted to. God, I wanted to. So when my coworker Emma invited me to her birthday party that Saturday night, I said yes. First time I'd said yes to anything social in a month. You need this, Rachel said when I called her. You need to get out of that house. Get out of your head. Bruno will be fine for a few hours. She was right. I knew she was right. But the morning of the party, Bruno wouldn't eat, wouldn't go outside, just paced from room to room, checking windows, checking doors. I'll only be gone 3 hours, I told him. 4 at most, you'll be okay. He sat down in front of the door, stared at me. Don't do this. Don't make me feel guilty. I need this. He didn't move. I left at 7, made sure all the doors were locked, all the windows secure, cameras on, phone charged. Emma's party was downtown. 20 people, music, drinks, laughter, everything I'd been missing. I had 2 glasses of wine, talked to people I barely knew, felt human again. At 9:30, my phone buzzed. Motion detected, backyard. My stomach dropped. I opened the app. The back camera showed the yard. Empty, just shadows from the neighbor's porch light. Probably an animal, raccoon, cat, nothing. But my hands were shaking. Motion detected, side of house. I stood up. I need to go. Already, Emma said. You just got here. I'm sorry, something's wrong at home. I was in my car in under 2 minutes, breaking speed limits, running yellow lights. Motion detected, front porch. I pulled up the front camera. Someone was at my door, dark clothes, hood up, face obscured. They were trying the doorknob. I called 911 as I drove. Someone's breaking into my house. I have it on camera. I'm 5 minutes away. Please send someone. The dispatcher asked for my address, said units were on the way. Motion detected, back door. They were trying every entrance. I screamed into the phone. They're trying to get in. My dog is inside. Please hurry. Ma'am, stay calm. Officers are 3 minutes out. I was breaking every traffic law, 2 minutes from home. Then the camera feed from inside the house, the one I'd placed in the living room. Bruno was standing in the center of the room, facing the back door, every hair on his body standing up. The doorknob was turning. No, I whispered. No, no, no. The door opened. The figure stepped inside. Bruno didn't bark, didn't growl, just stood there, waiting. The figure closed the door behind them, looked around, then pulled off their hood. David. David. He was holding something. I couldn't see what. The camera angle was wrong. He walked toward the living room, slow, deliberate. Come here, dog, he said. His voice was cold, flat. Come here. Bruno didn't move. David laughed. You ruined everything, you know that? She would have said yes. We'd be living together by now, but you wouldn't let it happen. You wouldn't let her trust me. He took another step forward. So I'm going to fix that problem. He raised his hand. I saw it now, a metal pipe. Then I'll wait for her, and we'll have a conversation about second chances. I was screaming, into the phone, at the windshield, at nothing. 1 minute from home. On the camera, David moved closer. Bruno still hadn't moved. What's wrong, dog? Not so tough now. He raised the pipe higher. Bruno lunged. Not at David, at his hand. His wrist, locked his jaw and twisted. David screamed, dropped the pipe, tried to pull away. Bruno held on, dragged him to the ground. David was kicking, punching, trying to get free, but Bruno wouldn't let go, wouldn't stop. I screeched into my driveway, sirens right behind me, 3 police cars. I ran to the door. It was still locked from the outside. I used my key, hands shaking so bad I could barely turn it. Inside, David was on the ground, bleeding, Bruno's jaws still clamped on his wrist. He was crying, begging, trying to crawl away. Bruno saw me, released him, walked calmly over to me and sat down at my feet. The police rushed in, weapons drawn, shouting. They pulled David up, read him his rights. One officer kicked the pipe away. Another officer approached me. Ma'am, are you hurt? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just shook my head. Is this your dog? I nodded. He saved your life. I looked down at Bruno. He was staring up at me, calm, certain. Like he'd known this was coming all along. They took David away in handcuffs. Attempted burglary, assault with a deadly weapon, stalking, violated probation from a previous case I hadn't known about. Turns out David had a record. Domestic violence, restraining orders, prior convictions, he'd hidden it all. The officer who'd taken my initial reports looked sick when he found out, apologized, said he should have taken it more seriously. They found a journal in David's car, pages and pages of entries about me, my schedule, my routines, maps of my neighborhood, plans. The last entry was dated that morning. Tonight, fix the dog problem, wait for Sarah, make her understand, whatever it takes. I sat in my living room until dawn. Paramedics had checked Bruno, superficial wounds, nothing serious. He'd fought smart, fought to disable, not to kill. He sat next to me, never left my side. Rachel showed up at 6 in the morning, held me while I finally broke down, while I finally processed how close I'd come. Bruno knew, I kept saying. From the very first day, he knew. Dogs know, Rachel said quietly. They always know. The trial took 4 months. I had to testify. Had to see David again, sitting at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit. He stared at me the entire time, never blinked. His lawyer tried to argue that he just wanted to talk. That breaking in was a desperate act from a man in love. That Bruno was the real danger, unprovoked, vicious. The prosecutor played the security footage, all of it. David breaking in, David with the pipe, David's words. Then I'll wait for her. The jury took 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. 6 years, mandatory minimum. When they read the verdict, David finally looked away from me, looked down at his hands. The ones Bruno had torn into. They'd healed poorly, scarred. He'd carry those marks for the rest of his life. I walked out of that courtroom with Rachel on one side and Bruno on the other. They'd made a special exception to allow him in during the verdict reading. My lawyer had argued he was a material witness, that his actions had saved my life. The judge agreed. Outside, cameras were waiting. Local news had picked up the story. Dog saves owner from intruder. Loyal pet stops attack. I didn't talk to any of them, just kept walking. That evening, I sat in my backyard with Bruno. The gate was new, reinforced. The security cameras were still running, would be for a long time. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you, I said. I'm sorry I didn't trust you. He rested his head on my leg. You knew from day one. You tried to tell me in every way you could, and I ignored you. The sun was setting, orange and pink across the clouds. Rachel said dogs always know, but it's more than that, isn't it? You don't just know, you remember, you watch, you wait. Bruno looked up at me, those amber eyes, that intelligence I'd recognized the very first day. You weren't just protecting me that night. You were waiting for him. You knew he'd come. You knew he'd show his true face eventually. A soft breeze moved through the trees. You let him think you were just a dog, just an animal, let him underestimate you. And when he came for you, you were ready. Bruno's tail thumped once against the grass. I thought about all those months, all those times Bruno had tried to warn me, the way he'd watch David, track his movements, memorize his scent, learn his patterns. He'd been preparing, studying, waiting for the moment when David would reveal himself. And when that moment came, Bruno hadn't hesitated. You didn't just save my life, I said quietly. You protected it long before I knew it needed protecting. We sat there until the stars came out. The house felt different after that, safer, not because of the cameras or the new locks or the security system, but because Bruno was there. I'd finally learned to trust what he'd been trying to tell me all along. Some people think dogs are simple creatures, loyal but limited, loving but unable to truly understand the complexities of human nature. Those people have never looked into the eyes of a dog like Bruno, never seen that sharp, focused intelligence, That ability to read people in ways we've forgotten how to. Dogs don't just love us, they study us, remember us, judge us. And when someone threatens their person, they don't forget. They don't forgive, they wait. They wait until the exact right moment, and then they act. David was denied parole at his first hearing, and his second. Bruno's testimony, the footage of what David had planned, what he'd been capable of, followed him through every appeal. Those scars on his hands followed him too. Every morning when I wake up, Bruno is there, still watching, still protecting, still remembering. I've had people ask me if I'm dadding again, if I'm ready to move on, to trust someone new. I tell them I'm not sure, that I'm taking my time. But the truth is, I've learned something about trust that most people never understand. The strongest relationships aren't built on words or promises or grand gestures. They're built on small moments, consistent actions, quiet observations. They're built on someone sitting beside you in the dark, not because you asked them to, but because they knew you needed them there. Bruno sits at the front window every evening now. Same spot, same position, still watching, still waiting. Not for David. He's gone, locked away where he can't hurt anyone. Bruno's watching for the next one. The next person who might smile the right way, say the right things, hide the wrong intentions. And if that person ever shows up, Bruno will know, long before I do. He'll watch them, track them, remember them, and if they ever try to hurt me, they'll learn what David learned. That loyalty isn't just about love. It's about memory, and justice, and the patience to wait for the exact right moment to show someone who they really are. I scratched behind Bruno's ears as the last light faded from the sky. "Thank you," I whispered, "for seeing what I couldn't, for remembering what I forgot, for protecting me when I didn't know I needed protection." He leaned into my hand, made that soft sound that wasn't quite a whine. And in that moment, I understood something profound. The best revenge isn't loud or violent or dramatic. It isn't about anger or hatred or getting even. The best revenge is simply this: being there, being ready, being patient enough to wait for the truth to reveal itself. And when it does, not flinching. Bruno had given David every chance to be the person he pretended to be, every opportunity to prove Bruno wrong. But David couldn't do it, couldn't maintain the mask, couldn't resist showing his true nature. And when he finally did, Bruno was ready. That's the thing about dogs like him. They don't act on assumptions, they don't judge prematurely. They observe, they remember, they wait for certainty. And then they protect. The stars were fully out now. The neighborhood was quiet. Bruno stood up, stretched, and walked to the back door, looked over his shoulder at me, waiting. I followed him inside, locked the door behind us, set the alarm, checked the cameras one last time. Everything was secure, everything was safe. Because Bruno was home. And he was still watching.